Hey everyone, we have released a major update with lots of improvements to the Locomotion controller for both the Parkour and Climbing System and the Melee Combat System. The Locomotion controller controls how the character moves, and it's a common system for both the assets. So let's look at what are the major improvements we've made to the Locomotion system. So if you just test one of the demo scenes, you can see that the movement of the character is much more smoother now. So the main change that we made in the movement is right now we have added acceleration and deceleration to the character. So the character will slowly accelerate or decelerate to the desired speed. Okay. So when you go from idle to run, the character will slowly accelerate. And when you stop, the character will slowly decelerate. Okay. So you can play with these values to control how fast you want the character to accelerate and decelerate. So for example, if I change the deceleration rate to 4, the character will take much longer to stop when he's running. Okay, so you can see that the character took much longer to stop, right? So that will add more realism, but the player might stop a little bit further after you release the input. So you can play with these values and find the one that fits for your game. Okay, let me also try reducing the acceleration to something like 4. So now the player will slowly accelerate to his full speed. All right. So this is one of the major improvements that we made. Another improvement that we made is we have added more turning animations. Okay. So now if the character is in the idle state, he'll use this turning animation. So turning on spot like this will reduce foot sliding. All right. The character will turn like this in idle. And if the character is walking, the character will turn using this animation. And if the character is running, he'll use this animation. All right. We had this turning animation for run before, but the other two animations are added in this update. So the next major update is you can change the type of locomotion so that the character can move in all four directions. Okay, so right now the character will always face towards the direction in which he's moving. But if you want the character to play strafing and backward animations instead, while always facing forward, then you can just check on this use multi-directional animation checkbox, and now the character will always face forward and he'll be able to walk in all four directions. Okay, you can also make the character run in all four directions. All right, so now you have the option to switch between these two modes for the locomotion controller. So if you're making a game like Assassin's Creed or Witcher, then you can use this type of controller. Otherwise, if you're going for a game like Uncharted, then you can use this type of controller where the character strafes while always looking forward. By the way, you get these features for the melee combat system also. Even though I'm showing it in the demo scene of the Parkour controller, the same will work for melee combat system. So you have lots of options here. You can turn optional animations like quick stop or quick turn on or off based on your preference. I'm just going through the most important features. We should spend more time on this if you want to understand how each property in the inspector works. So next major improvement that we have added is a built-in footstep module. Okay, so until now, if you wanted footstep, you'd have to do that manually, but now we have it built in. So the script footstep effects can be used to add footstep sounds and footstep particles, and then you can also override the footstep sounds and particles based on the ground on which the player is in. Okay, so if the player is on grass, you can play the footstep sounds for that type, and if the player is on metal, you can play completely different footstep sounds for that. Okay, so this will be the default footstep sounds, and by the way, you can add list of sounds here, and the system will play random sound effects from this for each footstep so that it doesn't sound repetitive. Okay, so let me show you how this works. I'll have to include the audio while recording. Alright, so I have edited the recording so that you can also hear the system audio. So now if I test the controller, you can hear the footstep sound. Alright, so you can easily change the footstep sounds by changing these audio files. And let me also show you how you can override the footstep sounds based on different surfaces. So to test that, I've added a new surface to the scene. So let's say this is a metal surface. So we want to play different footstep sounds for this surface, right? It should sound like the player is stepping on a metal. So to do that, we can go to the override step effects and we can add an element here. And from here we can override both the sound and the particles. So I just want to override the sounds, and you can also override it based on the material of the surface, texture of the surface, or the tag of the surface. I'll just choose material for now since that's the easiest. Using the tag is like the most efficient way, but it'll be a bit hard to set up because you'll have to tag everything in your scene. So for the material, I'll assign the metal material, which is the material of this object. Okay, and we want to add different sound effects here. So let me just add 4 new sound effects for this material, and we need to find footstep sounds for metal. So I just downloaded this free asset from the asset store, and I'll use the sound effects from that. So from here I'll choose footstep metal. All right, and let me assign it to our footstep fx script. I'll assign 4 sound effects for variety. The system will play random ones for each footstep. All right, so let's try testing this now. So now you can see that the footstep is different based on the surface. So when I'm on the normal ground, this is the footstep sound. But when I'm on the metal surface, this is how it sounds. Okay, so this footstep works by using triggers on the foot of the player. So if you expand the player's hierarchy, and if I just enable gizmos, you can see that we have triggers on the foot. So this trigger will be automatically added when you create a character from the character creation window. All right, and then you can also update the size and center of the foot trigger. So for example, if you want to make it bigger, you can change it to something like 0.15. So yeah, based on the foot of your character, you can change these values. All right. So next, let's look at a few other settings that we have in the Footstep FX script. So here we have sound ignore states and particle ignore states. So you can use this if you don't want to play sounds during some states. All right. So for example, when you're in combat, the footstep sounds might distract the player from the gameplay. So in that case, you can ignore that by checking this. Okay, you can also ignore that in climbing or parkour or any other state that you want. Okay, and then we also have the setting called adjust volume based on speed. So what this does is when the player is walking, the volume of the footstep will be like much less than when the player is running. Okay, so that's what this option is for. And here you can also set the ground layer. So the collision check with the foot trigger will only happen with those layers. All right. So next let's look at how to add particles during footstep. So just like the footstep sound, you just have to drag and drop the particles to this list. So I have a simple test particle prefab here. I'll just drag and drop it to this list. If you have more particles, you can add them for variety, but I'll just use one for now. And let me try testing it. Okay, so now you can see that when the player is walking, it is spawning the particle during each footstep. Okay, so this effect is not really good. It's just something that I made up really quick, but you can get good effects from professional packs, and that should look really good. Okay, so for the particles, we also have options to override them or ignore them based on states and all that. So yeah, go ahead and try that out. All right, so these are all the features in the Footstep module. So another thing I want to show you is the updates that we have made to the camera system. So this was an update that we released a few weeks back, but I haven't made a video for it back then. So let me show it to you now. So if you go to the third person camera inside the Parkour controller or the combat controller, you can see that we have lots of new settings. So the first improvement that we have made to the camera is we have made the camera collision a lot more smoother. All right. Earlier, the collisions were not this smooth, and you could see like a little bit of the other side, but that is improved now. And another major change that we have made for the camera is now you can have different camera settings based on the state that you're in. Okay, so let's say you want a different camera framing for the climbing or parkour, then you can achieve that by using the override settings. Okay, so here we have the default settings, and let's say we want to make the distance a lot more closer. So I'll change it to something like 1. So by default, the camera is a lot close to the player, but when the player is climbing, we don't want the camera to be that close because we won't be able to see other ledges to which the player can climb, right? So here in the override settings, the distance is 2.5, but the default is 1. So let's see how smoothly the camera blends between the two. So from here, if I try to climb, you can see that the camera smoothly blends to a distance of 2.5. Okay, and you could also change the framing offset if you want. So let's say you want a framing offset like this for the locomotion. All right, and then when I climb, you can see that the camera will smoothly blend. So you could have different camera settings for each state. All right, so these are the main updates that we released. So thanks a lot for all the support that you have been giving us. That is the reason why we are able to continuously improve the assets. So I hope you got some value out of this video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.